Do you need help protecting your finances as you enter retirement? David Dickens of KC Financial Advisors has got you covered. Welcome to the Cover Your Assets KC podcast.
It's another edition of Cover Your Assets KC. Walter Storholt here with David Dickens, President, Wealth Advisor of KC Financial Advisors. But you can find us from anywhere online at coveryourassetskc.com. On today's show, why it's not too late for your 2022 Roth contributions and 5 things you should know about it. So looking forward to this conversation with you, David. You all set for today's show?
I think I'm all set. Just can't get over how I'm still reading every Chiefs article that comes up. You know, you're
basking in the glow, it sounds like.
I didn't play a snap. They didn't ask me about a single play call. But boy, I just feel like I was part of that win.
Did you go to the parade?
I did not. I watched that from the comfort of my home office on my iPad.
Nice.
That was as close
rowdy
I
of a crowd for you, I would imagine. Yeah.
And way too big of a crowd with not enough exits to get out of there when you want to.
There you go. Yeah, you don't strike me as the parade type necessarily.
No.
You're the I'll go to the game type, but not the parade.
That's exactly right. I don't want to be in a parade, and I certainly don't want to watch a parade.
Well, I will say this, David, not that our listeners will care one iota about it, but I run a family football challenge. It's the FFC. It's a serious thing in our family. This was our 12th year of doing it. We have a humongous trophy that's like the Stanley Cup, and when you win, you get your name on the trophy, and you get to keep the trophy for a year and take it around with you and take pictures and things like that. And it's a very elaborate sort of like pick'em game that we've been doing with the family for many, many years. And I'm the commissioner, and I've never won. In fact, I'm almost always in the bottom third of results. Spend so much time, in the evenings and the weekends doing like the commissioner stuff. I don't really pay attention to my picks. But anyway, I was in the lead going into the Super Bowl this year, and the Chiefs helped me win it all. So
how about that?
Yep. I went with the Chiefs, and I won the trophy for the first time. So, woo!
You have got to love that. That is such a bond with our listeners.
Yes, isn't it? Isn't that great? So, and it's legit. I'll have to take a picture of the of me and the winning trophy and
put that in the notes of the podcast.
Put that in the notes. Yep, I'm gonna go do that. So yeah, if you want to see me holding the trophy, go check it out. It's snowing today, David. So maybe I'll go out in the snow and do a snowy trophy picture.
Then it might actually look like the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't quite have that shape, but still looks pretty good. So. Well, love it. Congrats to the Chiefs. Glad that you enjoyed it and are basking in that a little bit several days after the fact. Hope that continues on for you, and the team's all set for another good year next year.
Yeah, I may just live it all year.
You got it. All right, well, let's get into the financial stuff today. So, Roth contributions, you're saying even though we're into 2023, we're not done quite yet with 2022?
Yeah, so I've got a couple questions on that just in this last couple of weeks. So I thought we'd talk about it today. So the if you have a plan at work, well, December 31st is the last time you can put money in those. But if you don't have a plan at work, if you're contributing to an IRA or a Roth IRA on your own, you have up until tax day to make the last year's contribution. So up until the first thing you'd want to know is the deadline. So the deadline is April 18th of this year to make last year's contribution. So I occasionally get a question, hey, I'm going to file for an extension this year. Does that even push it out further? And the answer to that one is no. The drop dead deadline for your 2022 contribution is April 18th of this year.
Well, that's good to know. So whether you extend or not, that's not going to be flexible.
That doesn't give you more time, but you're already getting 3.5 months extra to make that last year's contribution. So there's still plenty of time, assuming you qualify, and that's kind of other things we're going to talk about in the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's work through it. What are the other things we should know about this?
So the second thing you'd want to make sure is you got to tell the custodian. So let's say your Roth, or for that matter, your IRA happens to be at TD Ameritrade or Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard, or maybe you have an advisor you work with. You got to make sure that you tell them that this is your 2022 contribution, because otherwise they're just going to default it to your 2023 contribution, and then later this year you won't be able to make your 2023 contribution. So make sure it's super clear to your custodian hey, this is for last year.
Okay, that makes sense. This is for last year, so just need to be very intentional about making sure that you tell them which year to apply it to. I think I've noticed that in the past when I was making automated contributions but didn't hit the max in a particular year. I think I got a notice maybe from the custodian that said like, hey, just so you know, your January, February, et cetera payments, they've been going still to 2022. Or maybe it was the other way around. It wasn't 2022, but whatever year it was. Maybe it was the other way around. They were saying, hey, these are applying to the next year now, but if you want to, we can apply these to the other one.
Yeah, so I'm not certain whether all custodians are the same or not, but you just want to make sure a little bit of communication goes a long way in a whole lots of areas of your life, but right. especially in this area. Just make sure that the people that are holding your money, make sure that they know it's a last year contribution.
All right, David, so 2 down. What's the third thing we should know about 2022 Roth contributions?
So the third thing I would say is kind of the question of, well, should I max out my contribution? And which begs the question, well, what is the max contribution? So if you're under age 50, the most you could put in is $6,000. If you're over 50, then that amount for 2022 is $7,000. So then occasionally I get the question, well, I already put in, say, $4,000 into my IRA. Can I put maybe $6,000 into both accounts? And the answer is no. You get a total of under 50, $6,000, over 50, $7,000, and you can split that up any way you want between Roth and IRA, whatever makes the most sense for you. But the most that you can put in per person, per household, is either $6,000 if you're under 50 or $7,000 if you're over. And not knowing anybody's particular situation, but I almost always encourage you to max that out because there are really good reasons eventually in your financial life to have done that.
So if you've got the ability to keep contributing to those 2022 contributions, keep doing that. Try to max it out before you start worrying about your 2023 ones.
That is exactly right.
Okay, very good. How about number 4?
So number 4 would be, maybe this should have been number 1, but am I even eligible to make a Roth contribution? And so I get this, and maybe I'm going to combine 5 and 6 together. I'll try to keep them, 4 and 5 together here, but I'll try to keep them separate. So if you had taxable compensation, then you are eligible to make a Roth contribution. The things that would not apply, for instance, if you just have rental income from some rental properties, well, that's not taxable compensation. That's taxable income, but it's not taxable compensation. So rental income doesn't count. Social Security doesn't count. Your pension doesn't count. But if you had a job that paid you taxable compensation, then that's all you really need to be eligible to make a Roth contribution. So let's say you're married filing joint and one spouse works. Well, that makes both spouses eligible to make a contribution. So example, I had a client who both of whom were retired. She took a part-time job because she was kind of bored, and she made about $10,000 in this was actually a year ago, but it doesn't really matter. And so what they decided to do, they could put up to 100% of her taxable compensation, as long as it was under the $7,000 that she could put in each. So they could, if she'd have made $14,000, they could have put $7,000 in his and $7,000 in hers, even though he played golf all the time and she took a part-time job. So it's if you're married filing joint, it covers both spouses. You could each put in, over 50 years old, a maximum of $7,000 up to the total amount of your earnings.
All right, that makes sense. So good to keep that in mind. Some extra savings opportunities for some of us.
There are, and while I'm on that topic, I also had a situation last year where some grandparents said, "Hey, I got a grandkid, and he doesn't make a lot of money. Can I open a Roth for him and just put the money in there?" And the answer is yes, you can. So the account has to be in the grandkid's name, or frankly, anybody's name. That you don't have to be related to them. They have to own the account. But if you want to gift them money and put it in as a Roth contribution, as long as they had taxable compensation, you can absolutely do that. So grandparents listening to this, if you're looking for ways, what I would consider to be a smart way to give your grandkid some money that's going to be tax-free forever, and all the growth is going to be tax-free forever, as long as they have taxable compensation, you could put $6,000 in their Roth, and believe me, they're going to be really happy by the time they get into their 50s and see that nice, big, juicy account that their grandparents contributed to that grew tax-free all those years.
Yeah, no kidding. That'll be fantastic. All right. Are we on number 5 now?
We are. And it's just really, am I too old to do this? And so it used to be under prior law that once you started required minimum distributions, and back then that was 70 and a half, but once you started required distributions, you couldn't put money in anymore. But that's not the case anymore. As long as you have taxable earnings, you can put money into an IRA or a Roth. Doesn't matter how old you are.
Well, that simplifies things and makes it very helpful to understand, and very good.
One of the instances where tax law actually made it a little more simple.
I guess I'm surprised that this is so. This has been such a straightforward episode here, David.
Well,
lots of smaller complications to worry about.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of things are fairly simple when you break them down, but there are a bunch of rules that you need to know. So all I try to do is figure out what are the 5 things that really might trip somebody up, cause them to say, forget it. There are really good reasons, really good financial reasons to not just blow off your 2022 contribution if you haven't already made it. So those are the 5. I actually do have for the listeners that made it this far, I've got a little bonus for you. I had a call with a person a couple of weeks ago, and she had extra money to do it. She hadn't done anything for last year, and she goes, maybe I should just stick it in the bank. She already had a Roth that had been open for years, but she's thinking, do I want to go through the hassle? And I strongly encouraged her, no, you need to make sure that this goes into your Roth. Why? If you stick it in the bank, then all the interest that you're going to earn each year, which these days is, can actually be 2 or 3 or 4%, but that's all going to be taxable. The IRS is going to have a claim on that money every year. Now you can go get the money anytime you want, and that's a great thing. But with your Roth contribution, in particular her, since she had an account open for a number of years, she puts the money in. There are no tax consequences to putting the money in. And the beautiful thing is, all the earnings going forward are tax-free. And when she takes the money out, every penny comes out tax-free. And there isn't any limit, any time limit. So the nice thing about a bank deposit is you just put it in today and you can get it out tomorrow. You can do the same thing with your Roth contribution. Just a little twist on that. She can because she'd had her Roth account open for years. But even if you just open one right now and you think, I've got this 5-year waiting period. The 5-year waiting period, there's a little tax involved if you take the money out before the end of the 5th year that your account was open. But that only accounts for the earnings on that account. The money you put into the Roth during that first 5 years, you can take that out anytime you want, the next day, the next month, the next year. And there's no tax, there's no penalties, there's no nothing. That money is totally liquid for you. It's only the earnings that you would have to pay a little bit of tax on to get it out of. So I really can't think of, other than everybody knows how to make a bank deposit, and not necessarily everybody knows how to make a Roth deposit. I can't think of a good reason why you would ever just stick the money in the bank instead of sticking it into your Roth IRA.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think you kind of outlined things just in a really simple, easy to understand way today, David. And so if you have had some questions about how to finish up your Roth IRA contributions for 2022, you should have a pretty comprehensive guide there through those 5 plus a bonus tip. So if you've got any further questions about it, though, don't hesitate to reach out to David and the team at 913-317-1414. That's 913-317-1414. Or online at coveryourassetskc.com. And you can find all that contact info in the description of today's show. Just check the show notes on your app, and you can get in touch with David easily with any additional thoughts that you have. David, thanks for the question. Not the question, but 5 questions and an extra one that we can be pondering today. And we'll look forward to another good episode with you soon.
Yeah, I'm with the kind of the hot start to the stock market in 2023, I'm working on an episode that I think I'm going to call things that you might not know about the S&P 500, since that tends to be considered the stock market in America. But there's some twisty things about it, so I think that's going to be a good episode. We'll do that next time.
We've all heard of things like the NASDAQ, the S&P, this. But yeah, what are they? What do we need to know about them? They just kind of get ingrained in our brains a little bit without really understanding or knowing all the details about it. So I'll look forward to being educated a little bit on next week's episode. Fantastic. All right. Love it. That'll be coming up soon. So join us next week for another edition of Cover Your Assets KC. For David, I'm Walter. We'll see you next time.
Investment advisory services offered through ChangePath LLC, a registered investment advisor. ChangePath LLC and KC Financial Advisors are separate companies.